Well, I may not have made a lot of videos, but I sure read a lot. Cheers. Welcome back, everybody, to me doing the weekly Navel-Gazing, where we talk about all the books I read last week, all the books I plan to read this week, all the videos I made last week, all the videos I plan to make this week, and it all descends into rambling, as usual. And, before we move any further, and I'll definitely come back to it later, we have a winner for this year's holiday reading thing, and it is a selection of Karl May novels. It won this morning, like I checked before recording this video. I'll make a proper video in the coming days where I talk about like the actual books that I plan to do and all of that stuff, so you can actually get prepared. But that's the winner. Second place goes to the Dragon Riders of Pern series by Anne McCaffrey, and the rest is somewhere behind that. Thanks everyone for voting. I really appreciate it. And now let's talk about books, shall we? I did read a lot last week. I did read a lot, and I hope I can remember all of them. I did, of course, finish up The Devil in the Shape of a Woman by Carol F. Carlson, which is a book about, well, witchcraft in New England, colonial New England to be precise, and it's interesting. It in how witchcraft and conversations around witchcraft differed in like colonial New England to England in a lot of ways, and sometimes I like to read and learn stuff like that, so that was fun. And then I did read Power and Progress, a 1,000-year-old struggle about innovation and prosperity. I think that's the subtext, or technology and prosperity, something like that. It's by Darren Acemoglu and Simon Johnson, and it is, well, it's exactly that. It's a look at technological progress and how the prosperity and the wealth created by technology were split up between different groups, and how that is maybe a bit of a problem in our current day, where technology is once again being used to create new wealth. And I mean, I don't have to tell you where it ends up, because you kind of know already, but it's it's academic history, economic history, and in this regard, certainly worth reading if you're interested in that kind of stuff like I am. So I did really appreciate that, and learned a lot, which, pretty good, I think. And then I did read a novel. Yeah, sometimes I do that, right? I did, in fact, read A History of the African American People as proposed by Strom Thurmond and told to Percival Everett and James Kincaid, which is, well, by Percival Everett and James Kincaid. I hope I got the title right. It's a bit complicated, as you can tell. And it's a short novel. It's fun. It's older. It now got an audiobook release, and I really enjoyed it. Like, really, really fun stuff. It's an epistolary novel, so it's all letters and office memos and so forth between James Kincaid and Percival Everett and the publisher and Strom Thurmond and Strom Thurmond's assistants and all kinds of other people, and it pokes relentless fun at the publishing industry, at everything around the publishing industry, at politics, at the way people talk about people like Strom Thurmond and racism in America, and so much more. It's incredibly fun if you like that kind of stuff. So it's very postmodern in that regard. Maybe I'll make a video on it. I'm not quite sure if I feel confident enough to do that, but if you like really, really disrespectful, funny, no-holds-barred weirdness, I highly recommend you reading that book. It's, as I said, really good. I really enjoyed it. And then I did read 2 more Cory Doctorow books, because sometimes you just have to. And one of them is, of course, Choke Point Capitalism, which is written by Rebecca Giblin and Cory Doctorow, and looks at choke point capitalism, which is their definition of certain forms of capitalism and corporations, basically taking a specific, choke point between in the production in a specific industry and using that to extract value. It's the kind of thing that turns you into like a rentier, and that's certainly close to the things that someone like Yanis Varoufakis talks about in techno-feudalism, and I did appreciate that. I've wanted to read it for a while, so I did. And then I did read The Internet Con by Cory Doctorow, and it's also really good. Once again, highly recommend it. You'll learn a lot of interesting things there. One thing about the choke point capitalism one that I really appreciated is that they look in particular at the media and culture industry and cultural production and those elements of like how publishing has been taken over by that, and how, say, music production has been taken over by these platforms, how producing YouTube videos has been taken over by that. In that regard, really interesting book. Highly recommended to people that are, maybe sometimes doing stuff on the internet with YouTube or whatever, right? Really cool. The Internet Con is more like the general stuff, like how everything sucks, and all of these are, obviously slightly older, and a lot of the stuff written about in those books has ended up in enshittification. So if you only read like one Cory Doctorow book, I guess it should be enshittification. If you want to read more than one, then Choke Point Capitalism, I think, with its look at YouTube and so forth, might be interesting to people like us who have spent way too much time on platforms like YouTube. So there's that, and especially with the look at like audiobook production and ebook production and so forth, and Amazon, you learn stuff, I guess, and isn't that fun? So I read those, and then I did read, well, in this case, reread More Everything Forever by Adam Becker, which is a really good book on sort of like the underlying ideology that drives Silicon Valley and the tech industry in a lot of ways. I read it earlier this year as a preparation for the AI video, and that will still happen, don't worry. So this is me rereading. That was sort of like getting my shit back together to finally record that video. Then I did, of course, also reread What Tech Calls Thinking by Adrian Daub, which is another one of those books that goes down that specific direction. And I reread that one. It looks at different sort of like big concepts that Silicon Valley and tech is often bandying about, and it's about dropping out of university. It's about disruption, another one of those terms that, comes up a lot. And what Daub shows is how tech billionaires in particular, but like how Silicon Valley is using these terms without fully understanding sort of like where they're coming from, and the shallowness of pseudo-philosophical terminology within big tech discourse. And that's, very much my kind of thing. Oh, and I did read another book, and I almost forgot, and that is, of course, Hate Monger, Stephen Miller, Donald Trump and the Radical Right, or Fascism. One of those is the subtitle. The point is, it's by Jean Guerrero, and it's a biography of Stephen Miller. And what a massive dickhead, right? It's like the one thing that I learned from this book is like there is no like big incident that turned Stephen Miller into like the Nazi that he is today. No, he always was a massive dickhead and asshole. Like as a kid, he was an asshole, and he just remained an asshole all his life because no one ever bullied him, and maybe that would have changed things, or at least, you can feel good about like having bullied Stephen Miller, but like no one ever did, and look what we got. So yeah, it's a frustrating book. If you want to get really, really angry at like an absolute piece of shit, that's the book to read. Otherwise, you can probably also just watch the Some More News video on Stephen Miller from like 2 weeks ago, which is heavily based on this book. So you can get all of that with like actual jokes and fun and stuff in between. But yeah. It felt necessary to read to understand more of like what's going on at this point. As you can tell, I've been reading a lot of books about very, very bad people recently, what with the biography of Peter Thiel in there and Gilded Rage, and obviously, I think it's important to read those because they kind of also fit into that larger field that will hopefully influence the artificial intelligence video. Well, that's all the videos, all the books I read last week. What I'm reading right now is, of course, Kyrinya by Ian MacDonald, because this morning, as you may have noticed or may have not noticed, Amazon Web Services had a lot of technical issues, which meant Audible was kind of down. And when I found out on my way to the gym, and I just wanted to pick a book, and all the books that I wanted to start didn't actually load for, Audible being on Amazon Web Services. Obviously, Audible didn't allow me a lot of things. But for whatever reason, Kyrinya, which I had downloaded on my phone like a year ago, that one, it started playing. Other books that were also downloaded on my phone already, it didn't start playing. But Kyrinya by Ian MacDonald, it started, and now I'm reading Kyrinya, which is obviously the second part to either Evolution's Shore or Chaga, depending on which edition you have. And look, it's Ian MacDonald. It's fucking amazing. He's like one of those authors, like whenever I pick up an Ian MacDonald book, like it takes a couple of pages and I'm like absolutely drawn in no matter which book it is. whether it's his style of writing or his approach to the different topics or whatever, I don't know. It's Ian MacDonald. It's perfect. It's amazing. You should read it if you can find it somewhere. Once again, Ian MacDonald books are unfortunately always a bit hard to find. Like, if you haven't read, well, first read Chaga or Evolution, sure, and then read Kirinya. I think you'll enjoy it. Obviously, this is me getting back to that whole like idea of making a lot of videos about all of Ian MacDonald's novels that I have access to, and well, now you know that. So that's what I'm doing right now. What about books that I plan to read this week? Well, I don't know. Obviously, I'm going to finish Kirinya, which probably will take another day or two because it's, a longish book. And then I might go back to doing more rereading for the AI video, or I'll pick some other thing. Maybe I'll start doing some rereading in the Malazan Book of the Fallen, because obviously next week the new one, No Life Forsaken, is coming out, and I definitely need to read The God Is Not Willing again, because I don't remember that much of it, and possibly I should also reread Gardens of the Moon. I know Britain Samoki Dude is doing a conversation about it in the nearish future, and it might be smart of me to reread Gardens of the Moon for that. And since No Life Forsaken seems to be set in Seven Cities, I always get confused by that. Anyway, in Seven Cities, having read Deadhouse Gates again might also help with that, because there seem to be some connections to Coltane and and the Chain of Dogs, so we'll see. That's all stuff that might happen this week. There's other books that I'm, somewhat interested in. If there's things you think I should read, as always, put them down in the comments, and I'll get to them whenever I'll get to them. And maybe I'll have an idea. Who knows? It's a whole wide world out there, as always. All right, that's books for you. What about videos, you may ask? Well, I made one. And that is, of course, the video that I did like 5 re-recordings, like 5 recordings before I was, happy enough or no longer too unhappy to actually put it up. And that is the video on, I call it best of lists, or your best of lists are wrong. I was trying to explain something about the language you use when we judge books, and how that language can lead to some problems in a lot of ways. It did moderately well, so I'm happy with that. If you watched it, if you commented on it, thank you very much. I do appreciate that. As I said, my goal here is to reflect on general, like the practices and the practice of booktubing, basically, and where it may have problems. And these are videos that I hope will, help some people to think or reflect more on what we are doing here when we, talk about books on the internet. And hopefully maybe some of you have thoughts on that, and maybe some of you will put them in a video. Who knows? Or everyone is, just keeps ignoring me, because that's usually what happens these days, which is a problem, obviously. So that's the video I made, and then I didn't do anything else because I went to visit my family, and I did not have an idea for like another video yet. So not too much, but at least something. So what about videos this week? Well, well, definitely, I'll try to make a video on Kirinya, because now that I've started reading it, and I have this playlist of videos about Ian MacDonald's books, all the way up and including Chaga or, Evolution Shore. It would be, obviously I'm going to make the next video for that, and picking that one up and putting it in there. Will I then move on to also, I guess the next one is River of God in publication order? I'm not quite sure. I would have to check that one against Tendaleo's story, which is a novella, also set in the Chaga and Kirinya space. Who knows? We'll find out in the future. Anyway, I'll make a video on Kirinya. That's definitely happening. Beyond that, I have ideas. My goal is to actually start recording the artificial intelligence video this week. I don't think I'll be done by the end of the week because yeah, that's a huge undertaking at this point, and if I record 1 or 2 parts per day, 1 or 2 chapters per day, it'll take like 5-6 days, and then if I'm unhappy with one, I may have to re-record it. So no promises there, and then I need to put the whole thing together, and yeah, it'll take a while. But what I've thought about, we'll see how that goes, is to maybe make a video for at least a couple of the books that I've read for this project. So maybe make one where I look at, for example, Empire of AI by Karen Howe, which I think is sort of like the big one that in a lot of ways talks, because it specifically talks about OpenAI and Anthropic in a lot of ways, does give like a really good idea of like where the current AI bubble kind of comes from, and pick that one, maybe compare it with Atlas of AI by Kate Crawford, which is a bit older but goes over like a lot of the same stuff, even mentions the word Empire of AI, so I assume that Karen Howe read it and took the name from that, but you know, who knows. So maybe pick one of those, do a video for More Everything Forever, because it looks so heavily at the ideology behind it in a lot of ways, and I think that is another like key book to talk about when we talk about these things. So pick that one, maybe another one or two that I think help sort of like chart a path through what is going on there. And my thought is, since I have to reread them or just reread them anyway, to do the big AI video, I can probably record like those as I go along while recording the big AI video, and put them up sort of like as introductory material, additional material or whatever, to the big video on the way there, so you can decide whether you want to read any of those books. So that's a thought. I'll see if I have the capacity to do that, if I feel comfortable doing that, who knows. But that's certainly something that will happen, that I'll try to make happen, and you'll find out, obviously. Then, as I said, I'll plan to make a video where I give you like a quick introduction to the whole Kalmai thing, which books I've picked for the reading. I have to narrow it down to like 13 books for 13 days. I'll try to find some links to English versions for those of you who want to read along. I know, because those were originally written in German. You can probably get a lot of the German ones on Project Gutenberg or something like that, because the originals are definitely beyond copyright at this point, or at least I hope so. So that's something I'll probably also do this week, so we have an idea there of where to go with that. So that's going to be a video that I can definitely make this week, explaining to you which books to pick if you feel like picking them, because there's still like 2 months basically until we get the whole thing off. But if you want to start ahead, or even think about whether you want to read those books or not with me, giving you some time to get started, I think might be a good idea. So that's something that will happen this week. Video on Kalmai, and a video on Kirinya by Ian MacDonald, and possibly stuff on AI. That's the plan for now. If I get really upset at something, or we'll find out, then maybe I'll make another video, sort of like a follow-up in that series of me reflecting on the whole book stuff on the internet conversations. There's certainly one that I want to make about TBRs and book holes and that kind of stuff. I just haven't found the full angle yet. But that's definitely something I need to talk about at some point, because I think there's room for reflection, as always. So that's roughly the plan, I think, with all of these. And of course, this Saturday is the last Saturday in the month. That means we'll do the live stream again, and the usual monthly live stream. I'll set it up early, so maybe it shows up in some of your recommendations and so forth. But yeah, that will be Saturday. Beyond that, and we'll see how that goes. The last ones haven't had like a lot of not exactly a lot of viewers. I'll definitely keep doing them. Maybe partly that was because of, the summer season and so forth, and maybe it's getting better, or more people will check in again now that we're reaching, colder climate in the northern hemisphere, and people have less important things to do in the evening because you can't spend it outside hanging out and partying or whatever. So maybe more people will show up again, and that's been something that I've been thinking about, like those view numbers together with obviously the still very limited number of people voting for the holiday book in winter. The number of comments I get on videos, a lot of this interaction is very, very low compared to like the numbers that this channel like has when it comes to subscribers. And I don't want to go down that road again and like complain or anything, because that's not the goal here. It's more like me trying to figure out what, and reflecting on those things. And one thing that I've learned or realized over the last couple of years is that I've slowly moved further and further away from like the booktube community, if you want to call it like that. Obviously, I've mentioned before that I don't think booktube is a community, and partly that's clearly because I can be a very obnoxious, kind of aggressive kind of person, right? I know that. I'm aware of that. And I have relatively clearly stated political ideas and all of that kind of stuff. And in that regard, I've realized that I've probably alienated large groups of other people talking about fantasy books on YouTube. And with that, a lot of their audiences, and as I said, I've left most of their Discord. I'm no longer on any of those Discord groups, which means I don't share my videos there. Which I don't know if that ever drew in a lot of audience. I don't think the view numbers actually dropped that significantly once I stopped, promoting videos on those channels. But it in a lot of ways, I think it does sort of like remove me from the awareness of a lot of people, and remove this channel from the awareness of a lot of people in these conversations, because a lot of like communities on Discord is of course conversations outside of YouTube, because YouTube is not good for conversations, right? You make a video and some people can comment, and maybe someone else decides to do a response video, but that's about it. Like a day-to-day conversation with back and forth, the way you have like had in like old like internet forums, or now have on say Discord, for example. That's not built into YouTube. And yes, I know that the community tab now allows viewers, subscribers to also post comments and post like actual posts and so forth, but that's still very new. So a lot of like the conversations and stuff that sort of like builds communities is happening offsite, is happening outside of YouTube, and a lot of it is happening on Discord. And that involves both like people talking to their audience and viewers and commenters and so forth, but also creators talking to each other and planning stuff together and forming these human connections. And I've never been good at doing that. I'm just not good at like forming human connections in a lot of ways. So I've often felt somewhat alienated from other creators in that regard. And as I said, I've been very active in alienating people myself. I'm not blaming anyone here. I'm just saying it's something that I've noticed over the years, which is, why I rarely do any collaborations anymore, because, outside of Britain, no one has invited me to any collaboration this year, I think. Or maybe early this year it was Jarrett on the Fantasy Thinker, or that might have been last year already, because, time flies and stuff. But, you know what I mean? I'm not in any of these places where these things are planned and these conversations happen. And that is certainly something that I sometimes regret. In that it's like either I ask someone else to come on my channel or nothing will happen. But it also means that if I have like an idea for like a larger conversation with more than like one person on, I have like an idea for like a project where I'm like, hey, wouldn't it be cool to have like 4 or 5 other YouTubers on for like something, right? Yeah, I wouldn't know who to ask at this point, right? And that is sort of frustrating in a lot of ways, that I've sort of like navigated myself into a position where I am, well, where I can't just like ask like 5 out of my 20 fellow booktubers to do something for me. That's not going to happen, because I don't have like 20 booktubers who talk to me regularly. And it kind of goes over into the same thing where I said, like, I make a video where I'm like, hey, this is something I think BookTube is doing wrong when it talks about reviews, when we talk about best off lists or whatever, and then you guys all comment on it, and I really appreciate that. But that's mostly people who only comment and don't make YouTube videos, and there is like no reaction, whereas someone else makes a YouTube video about something and you have like a conversation of like different booktubers, different YouTubers responding and so forth. And I feel like I'm outside of that, and partly that's, I would argue it's probably mostly my fault, and I don't know what to change about that, because it would mean me sort of like changing who I am, and I don't think I can do that, because a lot of this is tied into like my yeah, my personal beliefs, whether they are political, philosophical, or whatever, right? I can't deny those kind of things, and it's a bit of a conundrum, I guess, that I don't know how to get out of, because yeah, I don't know, it's a struggle, and it can be somewhat depressing, somewhat demotivating sometimes, but on the other hand, like, what you're gonna do, right? And that's just like something I wanted to bring up, because it's something that I've been thinking about over the last couple of weeks. When I had ideas for like projects, like, I wouldn't know who to invite for that, who to ask for that, so I guess I'll shelve that idea until something else comes up or things change. And that's also like why, and that's why I brought that up at the end here, after saying that I will do the monthly live stream. It's like I haven't had a guest on like a live stream for since May or early June, when Which She Reads was over, and that was fucking amazing, right? I haven't had anyone on since then, because I don't know who to ask at this point. Obviously I can always ask the same people to come back again, and that's probably what I should do at this point, but like, I'd like to have like other people on, like newer people and so forth, and I just wouldn't know where to start. Or if anyone is still willing to actually show their face on my channel, because maybe that will sort of like move you out of other people's views. I don't know. Possibly you'll just get ignored like I get, or it's weird, right? And possibly I'm just like thinking too much about it, and I'm too paranoid. It's it's a thing. I'm aware of that, and I said, like, I'm not blaming anyone here, except me. It's just like something I've been thinking about recently, possibly because it's the end of the year, and the end of the year usually comes with these kind of thoughts, and reflecting on like, what have I done, what have I achieved, and so forth. And don't get me wrong, I'm very, very grateful for all of you guys watching these, for everyone who is commenting. I'm very, very grateful for the few people on Bookish YouTube that react and interact with me. People like Britton, people like Liam, people like Kat over at the Fairy Librarian. I do really appreciate that very much. And I guess I'm very happy to be part of that, or at least close enough to you guys that you still do that. It just sometimes feels, weird, like it feels like screaming into like the nothingness, and going like, well, clearly nothing's going to come of like what I do here. And I've said this before, is like one of the big reasons why I make videos on YouTube is because I want to change things. I want to change the world. But basically, at the core of why I talk about books and talk about stuff connected to books is because I want to change the world and make the world a better place. And yes, there are other things you can do about that, and I try to do those when I can as well, but this is something I can do, so I'm doing it, and that is a key motivating thing here. And if that's your goal, and I know, using YouTube is like gambling. It's like you put up a video, you have no idea whether anyone will watch it or not, but you do this, and you put your heart and thoughts into something, or like, here's a big problem, we need to actually change things because it's causing harm or whatever, and you put that up, and 4 people comment, and then nothing happens. You're like, oh, I guess I've already been sort of like dismissed out of hand in the beginning, and that can be sort of like demotivating, as I said. But nevertheless, I didn't want to get this to get too dark. As I like lots of stuff coming this week, AI video coming this week, or at least starting this week, and I hope so to see some of you guys on Saturday during the live stream. Beyond that, I don't know. Read good books, be good people. Thanks for everything. I'll see you in the next one, and until then, well, cheers.